Hey guys, so welcome back to another BMW blog podcast episode. And today we have Jonny Lieberman, Motor Trend. I'm assuming all of you know Johnny, so probably needs no introduction. So I think we're going to dive right in. We're going to talk about BMW stuff today, a little bit of the electric stuff, some other brands, watches. So quite an exciting episode. And I'm personally thrilled to have Johnny here. We've been trying to connect for quite some time. So Johnny, thanks for taking the time and welcome.
Yes, I'm glad we're finally doing it, and I feel bad that it's taken this long. So,
No,
but I'm
it's all
happy
good. I mean,
because in between when we tried to first do it and of now doing it, I've driven some really good BMWs. So
nice.
I think
So,
the three best that are out currently. So it's good.
all right. So what are those? Let's start with that
Ah,
then.
okay.
Right on.
They are, I'll say, in order not worst, but very good to the best. The M8 Gran Coupe,
Okay.
the M3 Competition, and the M2 CS, which is the cherry on top of all of them. So,
So let's start with the M8 Gran Coupe. What did you like about the car?
well, I mean, I've driven the M8 Coupe. Actually, no, I haven't. I take it back. I've driven the 850, the M850i,
Hmm.
and I just missed the Coupe, and I heard a lot of my colleagues, meinen Kollegen, said pretty bad things about it. Um, and so I was very pleasantly surprised with driving the Gran Coupe, that it's everything you want in a big sedan. Obviously the power is incredible, but very neutral handling. You know, not doesn't understeer, which for a large sedan is good. Doesn't oversteer, which is also very good, and just fast, elegant, and beautiful. I mean, the color I had was like some gray. I wouldn't get gray, but
Yeah.
it was absolutely gorgeous, and I get why it's just such a desirable car, and it's one of those where in that segment, so RS7, Panameras, the AMG GT four doors. It's not the flashiest, but there's something kind of almost subtle and mature about it that's missing from the others, that I really like. I really like. So that was a nice treat of a car to drive.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a great car. It just I feel like it's pretty expensive.
It is.
So yeah, that's one of the barriers probably in the fast adoption of that car.
But if you look at the competition, it's no more expensive than an RS7. It's
Mhm.
cheaper than a Panamera with the same
Sure.
power. It's way cheaper than an AMG with the same. I mean, sure, E63,
Mhm.
it's comparable. A little different though. And again, the AMG GT 63S, you're talking 185,000, and whereas the BMW is like in the 140 range, so it's
Yeah.
it's a significant amount of money in the U.S. So, but
Yeah.
I really like that car a lot, and I've driven the M5 competition,
Hmm.
which a great car on a racetrack, absolutely phenomenal on a
Agree.
racetrack. Not so great on the road. At least the 2019 model was very stiff and very difficult to what's the word I'm looking for? What's the difference between a road and a track, right?
Yeah.
Well, so on a fast road, you're in a narrow 12-foot wide lane. On a track, they're all 40 feet wide, over 10 meters wide. So you can, who cares? Go for it. You can do
Yeah.
whatever you want. And you actually, it's counterintuitive, but you have a lot more room to screw around on a track, and you have a lot less to worry about than when you're on a public road. On a
Hmm.
public road, somebody's always coming at you. Again, it's on a good one, it's 12 feet wide. If you're in England, they're 8 feet wide. That's
Exactly.
so. So the M5 comp was a real handful, whereas the M8 comp wasn't. It was a real sweetheart, and you could enjoy it on the road. Whereas
Yeah.
I feel the M5 comp you had to take to a racetrack to really, and it was great. It was great on a racetrack, but it wasn't a good street car.
Gotcha. Do
So
you think the M8 Gran Coupe would actually work with an electric drivetrain? Would that make sense?
sure, yeah. I mean, it's one of those things like you'd be adding weight,
Hmm.
and are you going to be adding power as well? So if you add, you're probably going to add 800 pounds to make it fully
Hmm.
electric. I'd like to have a corresponding increase in power and torque. and weight's the enemy, and it would be different if it was heavier. But yeah, I mean, it's a big, sexy four door. It absolutely makes sense to be electric.
Gotcha. And I think the rumors from what I heard, basically the next generation A series, they might drop the convertible and the coupe and just keep the Gran Coupe. And if they follow through with their electrification plans, I probably BMW will try to electrify the Gran Coupe also. Well, I don't know if it's fully electric or hybrid, but they might do something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it makes sense, and I think that when you get a car that's as high end as the M8, it's already got so much sound deadening, like from day one, built into the platform, and I don't know how much 7 Series componentry is in there, but anything that's ever shared with Rolls-Royce is heavier than it needs to be and has more sound deadening. So like, yeah, it's a pretty good sounding V8, but you're not getting an M8 Gran Coupe to listen to the motor. You have dual pane glass and all that stuff. So the sound is kept out of the cabin. So I think it would make total sense for electrification. Absolutely.
Yeah, that'll be cool. Cool. So next one on the list, the new M3.
Yeah, wow. Wow.
So let's start before you tell me the driving experience. Tell me about the design. What do you think of it? 'Cause that's probably the craziest topic today.
I can see it over your shoulder. Awful. But
yeah, actually, that's actually the Keith. I think it's a collaboration with BMW. I think that's the one. Yeah. So
but let's back up before the design, because let's talk about the F80, M3 M4s. And how relatively bad they were when they first came out. Because for a long time people were like, "Oh, Johnny hates BMW." It's like I don't care. I don't like any car company. I've never, knock on wood, to this day, I've never taken $1 from a car company, to my knowledge. So I don't care. I just care about the products. I like models. Like I'll go to bat for a specific model of a BMW, but I don't care about BMW as a brand. So, which I know is tough for the BMW podcast, but the F80, when it came out, it was kind of a miss. It was like, ooh, what happened here? Like M3s are supposed to be something, M4s, and so I wasn't prepared for the new one, for the G80, to be that good, and also the jump up in level of performance is like, this is the F. It's kind of down here. The G is like. I'll leave my friend's name out of it, but I ran into a guy who had the 992 GT3.
Okay.
And he chased me down the hill. And I didn't really see him after a couple corners. You know what I mean? Like, was a driver? Possibly, but I think with the torque of the M3 competition, and the same power as the GT3, it ran away from the GT3.
And that was the non-competition too, right?
No, it was a competition. It was a competition. It was an M3 comp. But I was shocked. So first of all, the front end of that car is so planted. It's I'm trying to think of what it's like. It's like the new GT3, similar, where there's just not any. It just doesn't skip a beat. And again, it's not on. The GT3 is on Michelin Cup 2 NAR, so it's Porsche's like crazy thousands of dollars per tire cheater, race car tires. The BMW was on regular Michelin PS4s, which I have on my Ford. They're not nothing special, and the front was so planted, so weirdly, fantastically planted. And then you just have torque forever and ever and ever and ever. I mean, it's just such a ridiculously powerful motor. It doesn't even matter what gear you're in. The 8-speed is better than the dual clutch used to be. If you really pay attention, is it as quick shifting as mechanically possible? No, but it's fine. Believe me, it's fine. And you're not setting a lap time. And so don't worry about it. And the two people I know who are paid to race, who have driven it, so Randy Popst and Rob Holland, they both were blown away by the M3. Really? They both they just said, this is what I want as a race car driver. I want a front end that you can absolutely just do anything with, and you always know where the car's going to be positioned. You never have any doubts. and I want more torque than I know what to do with. I just want torque forever so I can get out of a corner.
Yeah.
And so, journalists like me and people that buy the cars, they talk about naturally aspirated engines and it's a poem and it's like God made it and all that. Race car drivers don't care. They want to win the race. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah.
So
On the best tech. Yeah.
so the guys that are actually paid to drive fast, they were like blown away by the M3, the comp. Actually, and Randy, to be fair, Randy said he liked the non-comp even better,
Really?
and not he doesn't like manuals. He just thought that it was like a sweeter, more balanced
fun.
vehicle with less power.
Gotcha.
So,
Yes, I mean it's actually pretty cool that they still offered the manual because not everybody does. So,
no, it's great, and it's funny in North America for high dollar cars. There is a big take rate on manuals still. Like on the last GT3, I think it was like 70%. Huge take rate. So it's good and it makes sense and it fits the character of the car. I haven't driven it yet, the manual, but I'm booking it soon, so I'll let you know.
Yeah, nice.
But yeah, and then like even stuff, the seats. There's a lot the competition
Carbon.
seats. Miserably uncomfortable driving around town. I had to go across LA in post-pandemic awful LA traffic.
Traffic. Yeah.
90 minutes to go 30 miles. Horrible. However, in the canyons, driving it the way it's meant to be driven, best seats I've ever experienced in a production car. Like I actually got out of the M3 comp and into a GT3, the new one, and it's like, oh, the GTC seats are soft and I'm flying all over the place. The BMW seats, like, you were bolted in. It was
Yeah, and
incredible.
you can adjust them actually even more.
Yeah,
adjustable side also.
it's not even so much the adjustability. It's just like, they have like slots for your legs. It's
Yeah,
weird. It's more than I've ever seen on a racing seat. Like it has stuff for your inner thigh. But they're super effective. I was kind of blown away by how well they actually worked. Horrible around town, like so uncomfortable. Especially if you leave your wallet in your back pocket, you're just like, oh, and then you can't reach your wallet. You have to you have to like unbuckle your seatbelt to get your wallet out. But so overall, the M3 was very impressive. It lacks the sweetness of the M2 CS. We'll get to that in a second.
Okay, yeah.
There's an all-around magic to the M2 CS, where I'm sure when eventually we know there'll be an M3 CS, they'll get there. And
Exactly.
and I've driven the M4 CS, and I really love that. The
I loved
previous
it too,
gen,
yeah.
it's a brilliant car. Which with that, and as everyone who drove the M4 CS said, like, why didn't they do this?
Exactly. That's exactly what I said in my review as well. I'm
Yeah.
like, this is what the F80, F82 should have been from the get-go.
Yeah. Yeah. So now what's incredible is I think you have this wonderful starting point on the G80, M3, M4, and like I can't even imagine what they're gonna do when it gets to the CS.
They're even talking about CSL. So they're even talking about doing an M4 CSL.
Which makes sense because they came out with the M3 and the M3 comp on the same day, so they want to hit production cycles, right? So they'll hit the CS, then they'll end it with the CSL, which makes total sense.
Yeah, because I think the CSL, they want to replace the GTS with it. I'm just kind of curious to see CSL always stand for lightweight, so I don't know if they can do any lightweight reduction on it. That'll be interesting.
Could. I mean, you rip out the rear seat. There's 200 pounds. You can always do something.
Yeah.
Carbon fiber doors. I mean, there's a zillion things you can do. It's just you want
Depends
to
what
spend
becomes
the money.
profitable to do though.
Right.
Yeah,
Well,
that'd be
can you get
amazing.
people to spend the money? And I hope actually, like I liked the what'd you say, the GTS. I drove that.
Yeah.
But it's funny. So I drove it in Spain on the launch.
Barcelona.
And I was with Jethro Bovington, and we, both of us were like, "This is the best thing ever." Blah blah blah. And then we got it for our best driver's car, and I'm like, "This is good." But guys, just so you know, this is gonna win. This is the winner. And then it came in like 10th out of 12. And what I realized was it's so adjustable that BMW had been there for 2 weeks at Circuit de Catalunya, setting it up perfect for that track, and they didn't let us go on the street.
Yeah.
And so it was not set up for what we were doing. So it was rather bad. So I hope that if they do a CSL, it's not quite as, you shouldn't have to spend that much time to set up a car, you know.
Yeah. No, I think the GTS, I mean, on track was fantastic when I drove it. I think on the street it was a little not controllable. I found it to be unpredictable. And if you're not a good driver, dangerous a little bit.
But it had 40 different. You could have changed it, but like, I sort of know how to do that, like sorta. Most people probably know like a little less than me, and I know just enough to be dangerous, you know. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
it was cool. It was a neat car and it's collectible, but yeah, it was the M4 CS was 5 times as good.
Agreed, yeah. And I think the M3 CS and M4 CS, the F80 generation, I think those will become some sort of icons in the M community for sure.
They should. I mean, I you know, it's funny. We I get asked a lot when I used to do that show Head to Head, and so people they always say like, is there any time there was a car that lost that you really think about?
Yeah.
So the two that I always bring up was the Audi. We had the RS5 went up against the C63S, and the AMG was better, but God, I really love that RS5. It was like, and then the other one was we had the M4 CS against a 991 GTS, and like, oh, God, it's hard to beat a 911 at the 911 game, you know. Yeah. And we went around the Nürburgring with both cars, and like, how do I put this? Like the Porsche was better. It was a better car to drive. The rear end was better. It turned a faster lap. But I still think about driving the BMW and like the I don't want to say skill, but the thrill I got out of keeping that rear end on the ground when, you know, jumping and like, foxhole and all that. Like it took a lot, you know, and I really driving that M4 CS around the Nürburgring was like one of my favorite car memories, you know. So it lost, but boy, is it good, you know, type thing.
It is very good. Let me ask you this: are you a fan of Tourings?
Of
Tourings, like sports wagons?
Oh yeah, wagons. Yes,
Touring,
yes.
Yeah. I'm only asking because they are doing this M3 Touring now, the sports wagon, whatever they want to call it. But it's not coming to the US, and I always wonder if that car would have been successful here or not.
It would, and hopefully, Audi just finally brought the RS6 to the US, and I think they basically sold out their supply.
They sold out, yeah.
So I hope BMW and Mercedes does do the E63, but that C63, which is, that's the one.
It's a cool car, yeah, for sure.
Maybe they're like, boy, there is a market. People have this pandemic money. The rich haven't paid taxes since Reagan. Everyone's just, we can sell a lot of stuff. So I hope they look at that and, because I remember the whatever it was, the RS4, the first RS4 that came to the US, like the B5 or whatever it was. Yeah. They made a wagon, and at the time I was like, Audi, bring the wagon, and this was like 2007. And at the time they said they can't because in the wagon, because the rear end was different, they moved the battery and they would have had to re-crash test it. And they decided not to crash test it for the US. So that's why they didn't bring, which is like, come on, guys. You have a factory. You can crash test all day long. You can build more cars.
In your experience,
yes, like
no. I was going to ask you, what do you think are the costs to homologate a car for the US?
I don't know the actual numbers, but it's just one of those. It's more if you look at like what Audi did with the RS6, right? Like whatever anyone thought about it. If you sell every single one, you've proved your business case, and if you sell every single one, you probably could have sold more, right? Yeah. So you underestimated demand right off the bat. So. I remember sitting with Volvo years ago, and the PR guy at the time screaming at me, like, this is when Volvo stopped selling wagons in the U.S. Stop with wagons. Nobody wants wagons. Now they sell, 6 different wagons. So I don't know. If they brought it in, and if they just look at it as a special edition, you know what I mean? Instead of saying it's like a full production thing, I think there's room. I think enthusiasts are hungry for these things. It's the forbidden fruit, and again, if you're bringing in the M3 and the C63, well, that's a much lower price point than the RS6, right? The RS6 is, 110 base, 130,000 the way they're leaving dealerships. So you'd be talking like 80 for the others, and like, boy, that's 80,000. You can actually lease those. A lot of people can afford that. A lot more than can afford a
Yeah.
$130,000 lease, which is how most of these cars in the U.S. are sold is via lease.
Realize, yeah.
So I think there's a huge opportunity there, and if they just look at it like, the way they look at like a CS car, it's just
Yeah.
a special edition. That's all it is.
Correct. Yeah.
Don't look at it as regular production. Yeah, they could move a few thousand units a year, no problem.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I mean, if they will bring it here, there will be a lot of enthusiasts that would actually buy it because, it's the first of its kind, really. Who knows if they're gonna make one after this, especially if all going electric.
Are they doing an M3 wagon with a manual or touring?
No, so it's all gonna be. I mean, they haven't confirmed, but I've heard it's gonna be competition and auto.
Oh.
So, yeah. So manual would have been cool, but no.
Manual would have been neat because the last one we had was the Cadillac CTS V wagon with a manual, which
That was a manual, yeah.
and it was funny because they made, I forget the exact numbers, but they made about 1,600 of those, and like
Yeah.
500 were manuals. And if you look at the price, used, like, the manuals are worth almost double
Way
what the
more.
automatics are worth. Yeah.
Yeah,
And they
so-
were much better.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's always this thing with the. Enthusiasts always want cars here, and then when they get here, nobody really buys them. That's always an issue with BMW. I think they tried that with the regular wagon too.
Yeah, except they look at it. I think with the regular wagon, they look at it as like they want to sell as many regular wagons as they do SUVs. Don't look at it that way. Just look at it as you look at a CS, right? We're going to sell 2,500 CSs, and we'll sell this many M3 wagons.
Yeah.
So
I mean, it's a good marketing tool, right? I mean, you use that not to make money like on the car, but just to, prove that you're the ultimate driving machine and you're building fast Tourings and sports wagons and all of that.
yeah,
So,
and you're already building them. And again, I mean, I hope Audi shows that, like, if it,
Yeah.
they sold every RS6, and I'm sure the average transaction price was $130,000. Like, what other
not cheap,
Audi
exactly.
is selling like that at that price? Like, none.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so
Exactly.
yeah,
That'll be
so I
interesting.
think there's an opportunity there,
Yeah.
for sure.
Are you still a manual kind of guy?
It depends on the car. I've long said, and I'll keep saying this. If you look at, like, let's take 911 for instance, right?
Yeah.
So the PDK is better than the 7-speed manual
Agreed.
in the 911. The 7-speed manual in the 911 is funky. It's not good for a lot of reasons. Geared wrong, reverse, first, third, fifth, seventh. Sorry, I'm out of camera range here, but I can't even fit it in the screen.
Yeah.
Too many forwards, right? Corvette does a 7-speed, and they do first, third, fifth, seven, whatever they do. Reverses behind 7.
Yeah.
Where Porsche, we have to have 5 forward D10s.
Yeah.
So it's like, no matter what, once a drive, you will want third and grab fifth, or you'll be on the freeway and you want 7th and you grab fifth, or if you want fifth and So it's like, I don't want a Porsche that's not precise, right? You're buying the Porsche because they're these wonderful instruments, blah 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 blah. That said, you switch to GT3. PDK is great, but manual is 100 times better. By the way, it's a different manual. It's geared different. It's a 6-speed. You notice it's not the 7-speed for the good car. It's got metal bushings. I think they're like brass bushings. It's the best feeling manual ever made. So, and I'll tell you a funny story if since we have a second. So
Sure.
I'm on the launch of the 991.2.
Okay.
And I was with my colleague at the time, Nelson, who worked for Automobile, and they go,
Oh,
"Hey,
Nelson.
we're going to drive to the track. Obviously, you guys want the PDK for the track, but we'll let you drive out there in the manual." So, we're on the freeway, essentially.
Yeah.
And, it's a 9,000 RPM red line, but you're on the freeway. So I'm like, yeah, manual schmanual, right?
Yeah.
Drive the PDK. And by the way, we're chasing Volta Roll around the track, and it's wonderful, right? Yeah. And I'm like, this is great. And then before we leave, Walter says, "Hey, you should really drive the manual on the track." And in my head, I'm like, well, manual, blah. But okay, Walter, fine. And then it's like, the car comes alive. It's still one of my, like, favorite moments. Was I even remember the corner? I can't remember the name of the track, but it was just one corner where. So on the GT3, the differential. On the manual, it's a mechanical locker, and on the PDK version, because there's already hydraulic pumps, they use it's a hydro fluid locker, electro hydraulic. So it's a physically different rear end of the car, and it's 10 times better in the manual. And like, just you get that, it's just magic, you know. Just like, oh my god, I can't believe how wonderful this is to drive. So I can go either way. If the PDK is better, or whatever, the dual clutch is better, or the automatic's better, give me that. If the manual is better, give me that. I'm not a purist by any stretch. I don't.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, I kind of feel the same way. Yeah.
Like with the M3, I drove the Comp, which is automatic. I wouldn't have had any more fun with a manual, and the car would have been slower and worse. I could tell. Like that car was designed to have that transmission on those tires, and just. I mean,
definitely concur.
Hard to explain again to people that haven't driven it, like how bloody fast that machine is. Like it is. I think I described it as a 5-legged man at an ass-kicking party. Like it's just it dominates everything else on the road in a weird, in an unusual way. Like it's almost like when the Nissan GTR came out, and you had to recalibrate what a sports car could do, because it was at the time in 2008, 9, whatever. It killed 911 turbos. Sure. Nothing was like the GTR. And I think the M3 for that price point is going to do the same thing for sedans. There's like,
I haven't driven it on the track. I drove it a little bit in Florida on the road, but I talked to Bill Oberlin, and, he might be a little bit biased towards BMW, but still, he was kind of honest. He said, this truly is a great car. And he kind of reiterated what you said, about the front end turning, where it's supposed to go and all of that. And he was blown away. He said, this is a really, really great car. And that makes it exciting, because now they're building this M4 GT3 racing car. So that could be a really, really good one. Yeah.
And like I said, Randy, who, he has no bias towards BMW whatsoever. And he loved it. I mean, he called me and he's like, Johnny, am I crazy? Is that like the best BMW ever built? I'm like, yeah, one of the top two. Yeah.
So before we move on, tell me about the design, because we started with that and we stopped. So
it's awful. I mean, I don't. How do you excuse that design?
So how could they've done it better? Like, if you were to look at the car and say, because you can't really go F80, that's a little too conservative too. I felt like that was always too conservative, but can you find a middle ground?
So the only thing I can say, years and years ago, before I was in the car business, I did websites and web design. And 3 of us sat in a room, and we didn't show anybody this website we were working on. We kept it top secret. And all we did was show each other, right? We never showed anybody else. We never got any outside opinions. We knew everything. And we showed it to everyone, and they were very unimpressed. Let's put it like that. And I have a feeling that's what happened here, is that the design team began sending each other love letters. Oh, it's so great. Oh, it's so bold. You're such a visionary. And so not only the front is very bad, but worse on the M3, much worse to me than the front. The way the rear door hits the rear fender, they didn't flare the door skin. So they left. So in other words, the 340i and the M3 have the same metal. It's the same door, and so it's just this horrible, abrupt. Like they could have, you look at why are Porsches so pretty? Well, a lot of the reason is, on a 930, that swell, right, the wide body where it swells out right at the rear wheel. They could have done that, and they didn't do that. And the way you do that is you spend a little more money, and you make the doors match the flared fender. So that's awful. The C-pillar, where the Hofmeister kink should be. I don't care what BMW is thinking. People want that. You expect that.
You do.
It's very generic. It's very anything. Like it. I saw the new Acura TSX parked next to a 440i. And like from the B pillar back, it's almost the same car. It's shocking how similar they are. So it doesn't look like a BMW, and it's generic. And then the rear is kind of nothing too. So it's a design strikeout. But who cares? Because like it's so good to drive.
Yeah.
And then if you're an enthusiast, like hey, a face like that is going to keep the resale value like low. So you could pick up like one of the best driving sedans, coupes in the world, maybe for not a lot of money in a couple years.
Yeah. So a couple of things, to just kind of build on that. I think design-wise, especially the Hofmeister King, I asked him, I don't know, maybe last year, on a chat, and I said, why did you change that? It's such an iconic, BMW design element. Everybody knows it, loves it, everybody talks about it. And I don't know if it was a PR answer that I got, could be, but they said, well, everybody else is doing now Hofmeister Kings, and everybody copied us, and we wanted to do something different. And I wasn't sold on it, but I'm going to talk to them soon, and I want to press them on that, because I didn't realize how much people actually care about that King. I was like, really? I'm like, wow.
I mean,
So,
that's a non-answer. I mean, they just changed it because some designer felt they should change it.
yeah,
And they wish here's the problem, right? If you don't have the Hofmeister Kink,
hmm,
then you have generic or terrible. You look at like what Cadillac is going through on the otherwise gorgeous, like the CT5,
yeah,
phenomenal looking car, except for the C pillar. And I was standing with the head of Cadillac, actually the head of GM design, but I was standing with him, and I'm like, the C pillar, man. And I remember Friday, he looks at me, he goes, you should have seen the stuff we rejected, So it's really hard to
yeah,
do a C pillar, especially
yeah,
now because everybody wants a fast back,
yep, yep,
right? You want to look like a hatchback, even if
yeah,
even if you have a trunk, you want to look like a hatch. And BMW can thank themselves for that. With the X6 is what ushered that in, right? The
true.
the
Hmm.
CLS Mercedes and the X6.
Sorry, yeah, yeah,
Well, man, if you have a hatch sloping roof like that, you either have a triangle, which is awful,
yeah,
or some shape. Well, there's
yeah.
not a lot of good shapes in the world.
Hmm.
The Hofmeister Kink was a good one. So
It
if
was
you
a good
have
one, yeah.
that, like, hold it and do not let go, because you're not going
Agreed.
to find a better shape. There's not that many,
Yeah. And it was iconic, yeah. So I mean, that's yeah. The other thing that I've been wondering, I mean, I'm not defending them in any way. Actually, in between our team members, we have different opinions on every car. So that's one of the nice things. I'm more like open-minded, and I can embrace things as long as they drive nice. I don't really care that much about the design, so I'm fine with that. But I do have some team members that, like Nico, that was supposed to be on the call with us, and he truly does not like the M3 and M4, and that's totally fair. But I think the other question that I keep asking myself, is whether they're ahead of their time, like Bangle maybe was, and maybe in a few years people will be like, oh, this is cool, or this is just one of those, striked out and that's done.
So I mean, I loved the Bangle stuff from the beginning. I remember
You did, yeah.
I was trying to think of the other day. What was the show car of the X6? Remember, before it was the
Oh yeah, it was
X6.
a
It had a name.
not X concept. It
No.
was
No, all right.
I know
Anyway,
which one you mean, but yeah,
that thing. And I
yeah,
remember seeing it it must have been in Frankfurt,
Frankfurt it was, yeah,
and I was like, wow, like
yeah,
that's great. And then I remember the 7 Series, especially the long wheelbase Bangle 7
hmm,
Series. When they were outside, they were fantastic. Like,
hmm,
I thought they were great.
yeah.
I loved his Z stuff he was doing. The 5 Series actually I think has held up very well.
I totally agree.
I think this is awful. I just I looked at it and looked at it, and
Yeah. Let me
it's
do a
it's just a miss.
side note
It's just
here
a
on the
miss.
5 Series. So the E65 Series, I just disagree with somebody recently, and I said the design still looks fresh, decades later, and that's great. But I found out why, actually. So I don't know if
I
you heard the
think I
story
might know
already.
the same story,
Yeah,
but
with the
go
guy
ahead.
that died, and they
Yes,
decided to keep yeah, which is fantastic. I
yeah,
think
he
that's
had
like,
cancer. He
yeah,
had
that's like,
cancer, and it was there was like 3 final designs that they were
yep,
gonna, and he died, and so they
yep,
took it. So I think that
yeah.
makes it 100 times better.
Exactly, yeah, because they haven't changed much. They said they wanted to pay tribute to him basically, and
Yeah,
let's just keep that design intact, and that was a great idea,
yeah,
and
and I
I
and
love that.
and they didn't say that till about 10 years later. Like
Yeah,
that
exactly.
never got out. So
Yeah,
I love that E60. Yeah,
yeah,
and
great.
I keep my eyes open for the E60 M5 manual.
F5. Oh yeah, yeah,
They might show
yeah.
up.
That car is perfect minus the SMG. The SMG. That's a little. But if you
I
get a
just
manual one
drove.
though,
What's that?
I think they made a manual also.
They made a manual for the
Yeah,
U.S. Yeah,
for the
and
US. Yeah,
yeah, U.S. only. I just speaking of bad transmission, I just drove
yeah.
a AMG CLK Black Series this morning.
I haven't driven that one yet. So how
And,
was it?
and and just it was perfect except for the transmission. It's
Really?
like transmissions. You know,
It's
you learn to drive around it,
mhm.
but it's everything on that car is just fantastic. It's
Yeah.
like,
And what was wrong with the transmission? Like, what really?
it was funny. So this guy Dave, who was his car, he said, "So I have no problem shift at red line. Just know that red line is 7,000, and you have to shift at 6 because it takes that long to send the signal to
Wow.
shift.
Wow.
And it
Interesting.
was just very slow. It was just
Yeah,
very, you
yeah.
know what I mean?
Very
It's like
interesting.
so.
Gotcha.
And then if you leave it in auto, it just can't keep up.
Yeah.
It's
So
too
yeah.
bad
So
because
that's the
the engine's perfect. The handling is beyond
mhm.
perfect. I
So
remember years
beautiful car.
ago when Tobias he had just become CEO of AMG. He went from like
Mhm.
chief of engineer to CEO, and I was sitting. I think I was having a cigarette with him back when I smoked. But and I said, so COK Black Series, like tell me about that car. And he goes,
Yeah,
I built the car I want to drive. You know,
yeah.
so.
German style.
Oh no, Tobias style. It's
Yeah,
Swabian Woodsman,
yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
but
I mean,
it was
that's how it
great.
should be, right? I mean, as an engineer, you definitely want to build a car that you want to drive. That you enjoy.
And he's one of I've driven with him. I mean, he's one of those rare engineers who's a very good driver. Like I've driven
Nice.
with engineers who are okay,
Yeah,
but he's very good, and
yeah.
he knows he knows what a good car should be.
Gotcha.
So
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I
So
hope
that's kind of the
Aston's
M3
I hope Aston Martins begin to reflect this. So
to reflect that. Yeah, yeah. But yeah, that's the M3 and M4. I guess we'll see. I don't know. I mean, we'll see if the design will stop sales. I'm kind of curious too. So next year, I really want to look at that.
it won't. It won't.
Oh,
It won't because it's the new M3 M4. And then also, I know a lot of kids that are like, I like it. It's really grown on me.
yeah,
If you get it in black, you can't tell. All
yeah,
these excuses.
yeah.
You know, I'm.
And yeah, I mean, like looking at social media, I mean, you're quite active too. And I look at our comments every time that we post the M3 and an M4, it's like 50-50. Like half the people hate it, half the people love it. I've done polls. I mean, granted, it's a small subset, of people, but 50-50 like all the time. So it's one of those things that I guess pricing might determine, sales. If they have some really good leases and all of that, I think the car will
Yeah.
definitely sell well, and especially with the X-Drive too.
I would just say, before I drove it, just by looking at it, I never would have even considered owning it. Now that I've
Gotcha.
driven it, I'm like,
Interesting. Hmm.
because I drive a Giulia. I have an Alfa Romeo Giulia,
Oh, you
and
do really? I didn't know.
yeah, and
Nice.
I'm
Good
like,
car.
great car, but
Yeah.
this I don't know. I gotta drive them back to back, but this
Yeah.
might drive better. This might be the better than the Giulia.
Yeah,
So
we actually did a Julia QV, I think, review last year, and it was really good. But
yeah,
actually, we just did a F80 to G80 comparison actually on the track in South Carolina, and just to go back to the same thing that you said, much better car than the F80, even though the F80 was cool in its own way, but much better car. And we put them like back to back, like literally a professional
yeah.
comparison where you go back to back on the same. The only thing that we haven't done really, I guess, really look at the PSI and all of that to kind of match them, But
No one looks
other
at
than
that. Yeah,
that,
yeah.
yeah,
That doesn't.
exactly.
That's yeah. The other thing too with modern tires, it's like if you have a 4 psi swing or 5, it
Yeah,
doesn't
does
affect
make a huge difference. Yeah.
so,
So let's move to the top one, then M2 CS.
yeah.
Because I
Again,
know I've actually read your post, and I was blown away by how excited you were, and I was looking
I
at your
was.
stories, and you were telling people it's better than the Porsche, it's better than that, and I was like, wow, really? And I was kind of jealous because due to COVID, I didn't drive it. One of my guys did, and now I'm trying to get one to kind of experience it. So tell me about that one.
So I drove the auto, or the, whatever, DCT and the
UCT,
manual, right?
gotcha,
So
both, okay,
um, I always liked the M2. I always liked the 2 Series. It's a fun car.
agreed,
M2 was good.
me too,
M2 competition was a little better. It was, it was a little hardcore, but
yeah,
this is not like this is such a giant. And I should have known because it's a CS, and
mm,
I've driven the M4 CS, but I
yeah,
didn't. I wasn't prepared for it. Yeah, it is. It is. I think it's the best driving BMW, therefore the best BMW ever made. Um, It's just such a complete package.
hmm,
We did a thing against a GT4. I'll tell you a funny
okay,
story.
yeah,
So
yeah,
we
tell
had the
me,
Porsche GT4, manual versus manual, right?
nice,
So we had this young guy, Nicky Kekian, works for us. Great driver, good kid,
really, yeah,
young, but he's not. He hasn't driven a lot, but. So
It's good potential.
we're going up the hill, and we drive 25 miles up, and we stop, and he gets out of the Porsche, and he's like, Johnny, I know I haven't driven as many things as you have, but I'm telling you, this Porsche, it feels like an extension of me. I've never driven such a pure, wonderful car. Like, I can't imagine how the BMW could be any better. But, I go, oh, okay, well, let's swap and go over here. We swap. He gets out. He goes, man, I was wrong. This BMW is so much more fun. And that's what it comes down to is, and I ended that review. I said, like, while there's, no doubt that the Porsche GT4 is the third or fourth best driving Porsche on sale today, there's equally as little doubt that this is the best BMW ever made, period. Like, it's just, it's that good. It's the complete everything. Yeah. Again, the GT4 is very good, but remember, the front end is off a 991.2 GT3. The rear end is a Cayman. And when you're mid-corner, you do notice that, hey, wait a second, the front end, the frequencies that it's bouncing around at are different than what's going on in the back of the car. And that, everyone says, oh, Porsche holds the Cayman back. It's like, no, they don't. It's like the Cayman holds the Cayman back because there's no room to package sophisticated suspension because the engine's right there where the suspension pickup points are. It's a problem with short mid-engine cars. It's always been a problem, always will be a problem. It's just packaging. So, the M2 CS, like, it feels like there's only one piece of suspension. It's perfect around corners. The engine's a delight. The brakes, I drove both cars had the carbon brakes. Like, oh my God,
nice.
The best feeling brakes. Just a masterpiece of a car. Like, I can't even think of anything that's wrong with it. It looks really cool. And just so much fun to drive. Just such a pure, wonderful driving experience. I think personally, I'd go for the dual clutch. It's just, and everyone's, but the reason why is with engines that have that much torque, it doesn't matter what gear you're in. It really doesn't make a difference if you're in fifth, sixth, or whatever, or sorry, third, fourth, fifth. You look at the M3, right? Peak torque is like 2,000 to 6,000. So no matter what gear you're in, you make, you know what I mean? And I just, the other reason why is, when I had the DCT, my friend has a Lamborghini Performante, hell of a car.
Of course, yeah.
And he was chasing me around Malibu, and admittedly in Malibu the roads are pretty tight and narrow, but he couldn't keep up. I was pulling away, we stopped, and I was talking to him, and he said, I probably could have kept up, but I just thought I'd damaged my car because you were like, bottoming out so much. And I was like, nah, never bottomed out. And the other thing is, and this is pretty remarkable, and I think it's a good thing, but he was telling me, he's like, the back end of your car was everywhere. I'm like, I didn't feel it. It felt great. Yeah. He's like, so it handles stuff really well. That's what you're paying for from the competition to the M2 CS is the suspension, and it's engineered. And a lot of people forget that. They're like, you can just get Öhlins or whatever, some aftermarket shock. I'm like, no. There's 100,000 kilometers of testing by really good German engineers that went into this car. You lose that the second you change out a mechanical component, and no one gets that. Nobody gets that. But
because it's vertical integration. People don't realize that testing is done as a unit, not necessarily as separate for the suspension and that. So once it's vertically integrated, then they know how one little change affects the entire car. But
yeah, and these engineers, they've been working on the 2 Series for a decade at this point. Like, they really know. And so then finally at the end, they go, okay, here's one where the accountants are out of the room. What's it going to take? Don't worry about the money. We'll charge, $86,000 for a 2 Series. Yeah. And they go, okay, well, I do this, and then that's what you wind up with. And it's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant.
Yeah. So that was actually what I wanted to ask you about, actually 2 things. One, the pricing. I mean, I think that's the main thing that people complain about because it can get up to $90K, and people say that it's a little bit too much for an M2. So what do you think about that one?
I mean, the one we had was 96 with the carbon brakes.
Okay, yeah, carbon brakes.
And then the dealers are putting a $15,000, you know.
Markup. Yeah.
So 110,000. Again, you know that's what it takes to make that
Yeah.
car do that. It's a limited car, you know. So are there 2,500 people on planet Earth who will see the value of it?
Probably.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you know. And
Agree.
is it worth it? I don't know. And you know, I don't know. It's like there's certain cars that I climb into, and immediately it's like, ooh, you know, and like Porsche GT3s tend to do
Yeah.
that because again, they're just. I really like. How do I put this? Like single purpose vehicles, right? A
Yeah.
GT3 is meant to do things on a track, right?
Track. Yeah.
It's not meant to be comfortable going to the store.
Yeah.
Um, you know, the Shelby GT350R is again meant for a track. A Toyota Land Cruiser is meant for off road,
Hmm.
and it's not a Swiss Army knife. It doesn't do a lot of things well, but it does one thing so goddamn
Good.
well,
Yeah.
and that's how the M2 CS to me is. It's this. I didn't drive it on a track, admittedly, but it's this canyon monster. It's just so alive and wonderful.
Yeah.
You know, and if you love driving, you know, is $90,000 a lot to pay to know that you're going to have this terrific experience every time you go to drive your car? Like, no, it's not. It's
Yeah.
actually that's a pretty good price.
Gotcha.
So,
And I think the other thing that I mean, people that don't have that much money to spend like on a car now, they bring up the argument of, well, I can do my M2 competition with some parts and change that, and I can, but you know, we should wrote an article and we say kind of the same thing. You can't really make an M2 competition into an M2 CS because there is a lot more than just changing the carbon fiber roof and you know adding brakes
yeah,
and suspension. You know.
yeah. But you know, the carbon fiber roof. That's a great point you bring up, right? So, and this one's very hard to explain, but a carbon fiber roof makes it steer better. Huh? Well, a little bit of that is weight, but I went. I'll never forget this. I went on a launch. It was some Subaru. It was like the STI. I can't remember Type RA, but there was 500 of them, and they had a carbon fiber roof,
Nice.
and they brought along a regular STI to drive. So you know we're driving them and
Mm.
come in, and we say, so you change the steering box, right? It's a different steering ratio. No.
Yeah.
I go, what do you mean? And the Japanese guys, they go, stiff, the roof.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what they're trying to say is that by having no flex up in the roof, then your suspension geometry suddenly is crisper. So your
Interesting.
turn in is better. You know, your stability through a corner is better. The car judders less. It actually makes the rear end work better with the front end. So the dividends you get from a stiff roof are massive, right? And then again, as we talked about, the damping
Yeah.
is just incredible on that car. So yeah, and again, I like the M2 Comp. Super fun car. You know,
Agreed.
we put it
It's a
third
great car.
place at best driver's car.
How you know that? Yeah.
Jethro and I drove one around Europe, and
Mhm.
we loved it. It's great,
Yeah.
super fun. But it's just not what this car is. It's just, you know, and again, it's like, remember the F80 M4 Comp versus the F80 M4 CS. Like,
Mhm.
wow, huge difference, right?
Yep.
So,
Yeah.
and it's not just tires or whatever.
Exactly. And I don't think people realize that you can actually spec your M2 competition with a carbon roof, but you have to do it at the dealer. And I don't know of anyone in the US that has done that because I'm assuming it's a pretty complicated job.
Right.
And
I have no idea. I shouldn't
yeah.
even comment on that. I
Yeah,
didn't know
yeah,
you
no,
could
that's
do that.
yeah, they offer this, you know, you can go to the dealer and they can replace it, but I don't know of any dealers that have done it because it's kind of risky and it's not an easy job as you do it in the factory. So
No, you want it
but
from the
yeah.
factory. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Body
yeah, no,
panel
so
factory, yeah.
exactly.
So
So the
anyways,
M2
yeah,
CS, yeah, I mean, yeah.
I love that M2 CS. I
Nice.
just, yeah. Just,
Would you buy? Did you? I mean, you. I actually own a BMW 1M, and I don't drive it enough because I like to babysit the car, so I'm at fault for that. But I'm assuming you drove the 1M, right?
yeah.
And how would you rate that against the M2 CS? Aside from performance, clearly the M2
I
CS is
I
better.
wouldn't at all. I always thought kind of I always felt, and I'm alone in this opinion, and I'm fine with
Yeah,
it. But
that's fine. Yeah.
I always felt that car was under engineered. I felt that they
You think
quickly.
really?
I
Yeah.
felt that they had some extra M3 stuff laying around.
Oh,
They,
definitely.
they slapped it on,
Yeah, for sure.
and I always thought that car was way too much oversteer. And I'm not, you know, like
It
people.
is a little bit.
Yeah, I don't like that. I like to drive really fast, and
Yeah.
oversteer means you're not going that fast because you're fighting the car.
Fighting the car all the
Also, that
time.
thing understeers a lot.
Yeah. Hmm.
So I always thought it was a bit of a little pig, and also I
Hmm.
think the side is very ugly with way that it looks like
Oh
it's
yeah, it's not
broken
a
in the
pretty
middle.
car,
So
but it's
sorry to
got some
insult
nice
your car.
like the rear end. It's really nice though.
Yeah, yeah.
Like that
Well,
car is
I have a
wide.
friend that has two of them. He loves them, and I'm sorry to insult your personal car, but
No, 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 nothing wrong with that.
I never thought much of it. I never
Yeah,
thought much of it at
yeah.
all.
I've actually heard that before. So honestly, from my personal experience, to tell you, I think you're fighting the car all the time to keep like on the road if you're going fast. You have to
Yeah,
be careful when it's wet. It's not easy car to drive. It's just like to me it's special because there are not that many, and I'm gonna admit that that I was chasing clout with that probably.
sure,
But
sure.
at the same time, there was really no BMW until recently that kind of made me happy driving in a car. So this one was kind of like,
Right,
well, this is cool. It's not perfect, but it was. I feel like it was better than the F80 M3 when it came out, so I had more fun driving this one. Then, of course, the M2 competition came, and I started to look at that, and I'm like, well, yeah, the M2, it's a better car to drive and all of that. But to me, it's special because it's a car that I was able to acquire for not too much money, and it's kind of like a classic. So, but I
yeah.
wouldn't rate it as the top BMW ever made
No,
or something like that.
no.
So,
And I remember we did years ago. We did a head-to-head where we had an E92 M3 and the 1M, and it was like
yeah,
M3 all day, all night.
hmm
Twice on Sunday.
it's
It was
that
just so
engine,
much better. It was just
Yeah,
so much better. And whereas I think this M2 CS, like I said, is better than like any BMW I've ever driven.
yeah,
So
nice.
and most other cars too, not just BMWs. Like it's good. I happen to drive it. Um, su- not like a week before I drove a 911 Carrera,
Yeah, I remember you
manual
posted that. Yeah, hmm
Carrera S, and I was like, man, I would totally take the M2 over the Porsche, like not even a question. And
yeah,
and also this goes back to that M3 comp. I remember 2006 or so, 2005. I drove it must have been an E46 M3 and a
hmm
996 on the same day on a track, right? And it was like, yeah, the E46 was cool, but when you went from the E46 to the 911, forget about it. Like
yeah, yeah, yeah.
911 destroyed it in
That's right.
every way a car can destroy a car. You know, uh, outright power, speed, handling, braking, specialness, performance, grip,
Yeah,
everything. Whereas I think the new M3 would outperform a 911 in almost every way. I'm not
yeah,
sure yet. I mean, on a track, Porsche usually finds a way. Blah 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 blah. It is lighter,
yeah.
but boy, like there's no more Golf. Before
Yeah,
it was M3 here and
huge gap.
Porsche here, and now it's they're here, they're
Are you
peers.
are you planning a comparison like head to head or something like that?
I wish. I don't know. I plan lots of stuff. It never happens. But we
Yeah,
did do M3 versus GT4, so I'm happy about that.
yeah, yeah. I saw
Um,
that. Yeah,
yeah, what I want to do, what I really want to do actually is M3 comp versus Giulia Quadrifoglio.
yeah, that would be a
I
good
think
one.
because the Giulia
Mm,
to me was the benchmark in the segment.
mhm,
Um, it was the best, but it was the best performance sedan
mm.
ever. This BMW might be better. I'm not sure yet. We
Gotcha.
gotta drive them the same day,
Looking
same
forward to
road.
seeing it. Yeah, exactly.
So, but
Yeah,
there's a chance. There's a chance.
I think what's cool, from BMW's perspective, is that they actually show that they can make some really good driving cars still, like the M3, the M2 CS, because everybody criticizes them, and I do too for like X5M and X6M cars that like big and uninspiring.
Hang on, I love X6M is like I love
I
X.
love it too. It's a fast car, but
I
it's
love it. I love it. Yeah, yeah.
okay. So let me ask you this:
Second
I
gen,
love the
second gen,
car as far
second.
as the driving.
Yeah.
I love it. It looks cool, coolish, but I could never understand who's the customer for that
I don't know.
car.
I don't know. But I'll tell you
Like,
something.
who is it?
I'll tell you. Okay, so years ago, I did a video where I did a hill climb event in a Cadillac. It was a
Oh, nice.
CTSV, right?
Okay.
And we had an X6M that we brought along as a support vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
And our director, who was a real car guy, he
Yeah.
began chasing me up the hill in the X6M, and
Mm-hmm.
he needed to buy something to haul his camera gear around.
Yeah.
And he had a E60 M5, and then he got rid of it for an E92 M3. He liked BMWs, obviously. He's like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna buy one. You know, I'm not sure if he ever did. I lost touch with him, but like, yeah, it was great as a hill climb car. You know, so and I live in LA. I see them like I don't see
Everywhere,
X5s. I see X5M. So you know,
and the X5M, it's a good one because that's very practical. So if I were to pick between the two, I would definitely take the X5M just because it's more practical. You know.
No way.
No, really?
X6. No.
Yeah, you like the design.
Point, well, at that point, it's like I want a 2-door, maybe a 1-door. You know, like how about no trunk? I want an SUV that has no utility. Like,
Zero. So here is a fun fact: the guy that designed the M2 and the X6, he actually lives in LA. He actually works for a Design Works now. He's a BMW guy.
Okay.
So yeah, he's the same guy that did the X6, the M2, and he also did a 6 GT. So, so yeah, but
yeah, no, I always love those. I mean, I went on I went on the launch of the X6. So whenever that was, 2008 maybe, 2009,
Atlanta. Was it? That was the X6M
in South Carolina. It was at
South Carolina,
factory, yeah.
And
I liked it then, you know. Like I've always liked that thing. And they were right, by the way. Like if you think about what the X6 has done, the GLE coupe, the RSQ8 or the whatever the Q8,
Q8,
those humpback weird Porsches, the Cayenne coupes, like BMW is so ahead of everyone. And Volkswagen, what's that thing? The big SUV. They have the coupe version now. You know what I mean? The big one. I want to say
What's the name? Yeah.
That thing. It's terrible. It's a horrible car.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
And they made a
I don't see too
version
many.
of it. Yeah. And so like they saw a niche, and it was a good niche, you know.
Yeah, there is a good niche. And actually the second generation is one, you have second or third. The rear, they fixed the rear seating too. I mean, I'm quite tall, almost 6'3", and I always had a hard time riding in the back of an X6. But this one, it's actually nice. They've done a really good job with the roof inside and the seats.
But they ruined the rear end. The rear end of the new one is so bad. The second gen looks so good.
Yeah.
And those horrible skinny taillights.
Yeah, that's kind of the trend on a lot of the new ones, and that's kind of lead me into the electrification, because a lot of the electric cars now, they have this tendency of a very slim taillights and headlights and all of that. So tell me, let's start with the we mentioned before we jumped on the podcast that you took a ride in the Lucid and Lucid Air. So tell me about that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I went to Laguna Seca, good track. And I got a ride in a very early production. So it's the car is called the Lucid Air, and so I got a ride in the Air Dream Edition. So that's going to be when it launches, every single option, special paint, but 1,100 horsepower and 500, 17-mile range and $160,000. So I got a ride in that. But that was a low speed ride because it was a very early build, but just kind of seeing how it went. But then I got a ride in like a mule that I was there because they had a 3-motor car. So like 1,800 horsepower. Yeah. That was having problems that day. But so they had a 2-motor version of it, and I went, and I remember at the time, like the guy was sort of talking to me through turn 4. And I was sort of like, could you stop talking and drive it fast? I want to see what it does. And so I've gone around Laguna Seca, at least 1,000 times. I should sit down and figure it out. But many times. And I've gone around Laguna Seca sitting in the passenger seat, Randy Pope's driving, Justin Bell driving, David Donahue driving, all kinds of race car drivers, right? Good drivers. We went around turn 5 in this thing. Like, first of all, absolutely silent and 1,100 horsepower. So, like, Bugatti Chiron levels of power, sort of. A little less, but Veyron levels. Yeah. And silent, just. And then, I've never gone around that corner that quick. It was crazy. And then we're going up the hill, and there's the sound booth. So the problem with Laguna Seca is they have these horrible, horrible sound limits, and so you can drive as fast as you want, but you have to lift between 5 and 6, full speed right past the sound booth, right, and then into 6 at like 1,000,000 miles an hour, and then I just kind of was like, okay, well, this is the death of internal combustion. Why would you want it? Why do you want to be loud and slow when you can be silent and fast? You know, and it was just amazing how well this car went. And the guy driving, he was a good driver. He wasn't great. You know, I bet you I know the track better than he does. He was an engineer, and they just rented it. You know,
Sure.
so I've probably done 1,000 laps more than he has. I could just tell by the way he was, doing the lines. And so yeah, it was pretty impressive. It was pretty impressive.
But
Now that that was as a passenger. So.
Yeah, no, I get it. Do we need over 1,000 horsepower in an electric car? Does that make sense?
Yes, we do.
Yeah?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Yes.
And why is that though? Just-
Need, define need, right? I mean, come on.
just.
I mean, look, I remember.
I'm thinking, what's the difference in between 900 and 1,100 aside from the 200?
I remember many years ago, I came to the conclusion. Don't ask.
Yeah.
I fell in love with the RS4, but I was like, 420 horsepower is the perfect amount of horsepower.
Yeah.
You never ever need more than this. And now, if I drove a 420 horsepower car, it's like, In fact,
Sluggish.
this morning I drove a 500 horsepower car, the CLK Black, and I'm like, because everyone's like, be careful, it's so fast, and I'm like, it's so.
Yeah, I mean,
yes, you need more. You always need more power. Yeah.
Yeah, it's true. Do you think they become dangerous for normal drivers?
Yes, I've been driving the Taycan. I have a Taycan Turbo S outside. Absolutely, I can. They're all over the internet. There's like those things crashing into stuff, and I know why. It's not like a Tesla is like we know is like 0.2 of a second quicker to 60, whatever. That's not what it's about. It's the way, and I should say I'm driving the 2020. I know they've changed things for 2021, but it's the like when you hit the pedal on a Tesla, there are split seconds, plural, before it launches. And when you hit the pedal on the Porsche, there's a split second before it launches. And it's so fast, the from pedal to motors turning is so fast. And the Turbo S is so quick that you're just going at this insane rate of speed instantly. And again, from when the Tesla actually starts moving to 60 miles an hour, it can get there faster, but the Porsche will start moving quicker than the Tesla. If that makes sense.
Makes sense.
And it's insane how quickly it gets up to speed. It's just like So
let me ask you this, because I think BMW's got a bunch of electric cars not coming out, but in my opinion, I feel like they're running behind a little bit, even though they had the advantage, I think. What's your take on that, and what you see in the pipeline from BMW versus the competitors?
Yes and no. I mean, like, look, Tesla's been doing this since 2011 now, and who's really caught up? No one, So,
true.
People are close, but as it's like to turn a vehicle around, it's about a 10-year process, right? So no, I think as long as they get some skin in the game within the next 2 to 3 years, so that people that are ready now to switch, like I wouldn't tell anyone to buy an i3 right now. Why would you? There's so many better choices out there.
I have one.
Right, but I'm saying if you don't have anything to do with BMW,
no, I actually like it as a city car. It's not a very pretty car, but as a city car, affordable, it's good. Yeah.
But I just meant like if you have that on one hand and you have a Tesla Model 3 with no options, like
clearly the Model 3 it's a better looking car. Yeah, for sure.
Well, not even better looking. It's just a better car. And so, but as long as they have something so that people can say, oh yeah, BMW is in my brain when I think of electric cars, but that said, like they're almost behind. Like, the one that's kind of really blown me away is the Ford Mach-E.
Did you drive it?
Yes, like, and I not even the GT, just the regular 2-motor. Since this is the BMW blog, my buddy Alex has a E39 M5, and he's a very good driver. And he chased me down Angeles Crest, and I was in the Ford, and I was like just a little bit quicker than him. And I said to him after we got out, I said, "All right, how hard were you driving?" And he goes, "Honestly, I was at about 9.5 tenths." He goes, "The only way I could have gone quicker would be to start late braking, but public road.
Dangerous,
No, I just didn't do it. So the Ford Mach-E, not the GT,
yeah.
is quicker than
M3, yeah.
an E39 M5, which is a hell of a car.
Agree,
So yeah, like BMW better get that SUV out quick
yeah.
because this is like if I was any of the German car companies, maybe not Audi because they do have the e-tron
Yeah,
out,
yeah.
but like
There's quite a
Mercedes, they
few.
couldn't get the EQC off the ground, and I'd be a little worried because
Yeah,
it's like whoa, like Ford of all
exactly.
Ford,
Yeah.
they've built this wonderful car.
Yeah,
So
I agree. I think what I wanted to ask you also about electrification is I don't know how familiar you are, but I think there are two choices right now when it comes to the platform. So BMW went down this route of a flexible architecture, which kind of limits them on what they can do with design and packaging and all of that, versus a fully dedicated platform. Now they're changing. I think they realize that it's not the right approach. What's your take on that? Like, how would you look at that?
yeah, no, you need to. I think you really need to. You're placing a bet, right? So I like what Mercedes is doing, right? So they've split it.
Split, yeah.
So everything that has a gas engine will become a hybrid. There will be no more pure gas within a few
Yeah.
years, and then they have another family of platforms that's pure electric,
Electric, yeah.
and that's probably the smart bet for the next generation
Mm-hmm.
or so. Eventually, you just go full battery. Why would you have gas
Yeah.
engines at all?
Mm-hmm.
Like there's no point.
Agreed.
Um, but like the new AMGs, I'm pretty excited about what they're up to with that. It sounds like a very cool
Yeah.
thing. And they even said they're like we don't care about efficiency. This is a pure
Performance car.
performance hybrid.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, oh, that'll be kind of
Yeah,
cool.
exactly.
So yeah, no, I think you need a dedicated platform. And then Porsche, they kind of stepped in it with the Taycan, at least the first year because you know they bought like off the shelf batteries, they bought off the shelf motors. It wasn't Porsche stuff, so it was heavier than it needed to be. So I think you really got to do it all yourself,
Yeah.
or at least have really good relationships with your suppliers. But the Taycan's like it's good, but like not it's not as good as it should be,
Yeah. It's probably,
especially for the money.
yeah, gotcha. I mean, it's not a cheap car.
Yeah.
That's one thing
Like
for
the
sure.
one I have is sitting out there is $201,000.
That is expensive.
Yeah,
That is expensive. Which color do you have?
blue,
The blue one,
some
yeah.
kind of blue.
It's
Let me see if the key says.
it's a good.
I'm always terrible with color names.
It's
I
a
go,
good
what is
looking
that?
one though.
Genetian blue.
Genetian blue. Okay, that's an
Genetian
interesting
blue.
name.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
Very nice.
yeah, I think a lot of people tend to compare now car brands in terms of electrification. In my opinion, it's still early on. It's early game. The market is so big. We barely scratch the surface on electric cars.
That's it. Like somebody said, like, what would you, if you had to buy a Tesla Model Y or the Ford Mach-E, what would you buy? And I said, honestly, I'd probably get the Model Y.
Gotcha.
It's a little bit better at certain electric car things.
Yeah.
And plus, I don't have one. If I bought an electric car, I would get a home charger, but I don't have a home
Yeah,
charger.
I don't
So
have either, yeah.
if you don't have a home charger, you can go to this Tesla Supercharger, which is genius and works every
Agreed.
single time, or go to Electrify America, which is like, it's do you like having your credit card declined for no reason? It's horrible, right? So
We don't have that in Chicago. Actually, we do, but I haven't used it yet. Yeah.
it's terrible.
Is it really?
It's terrible. I mean, there's tricks to make it work a little bit better, but
Gotcha.
anyways, they're very good when you finally break down and call them on the phone. They're very friendly people.
Nice.
I'll give them that. I think because everyone calls them
them,
constantly.
yeah.
In fact, yesterday I was trying to charge the damn Porsche. I had to plug and unplug 7 times. Right. The guy next to me, brand new Audi e-tron, his first charge, and he was on the phone. We're both on the phone with Electrify America at the same time. But they said, "Oh my God, Ford's so stupid. How could they release a car that isn't better than the Tesla?" I'm like, whoa. Like, wait a second. Like, electric SUVs of this size, right? There's so much room in the market. There's like, it's infinite, right?
Yeah.
That's gonna grow faster than any segment in the history of the automobile, right? Electric, car-ish crossovers. And the Mach-E, by the way, is 96% as good as the Tesla on their first
try.
go.
Yeah.
So like, there's plenty of the Honda Accord is 200% better than a Camry, but there's plenty of room for both in the market,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
So yeah. So there's gonna, you know, if we were having this conversation in 10 years, you know, we wouldn't even use the term electric car. We just say car.
Agreed. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. I mean, that's gonna be
so
the
it's
normal.
gonna happen
Yeah.
very soon. Yeah.
Exactly. No, I'm personally excited because I've been driving the i3. I had 4 of them, and I loved it. You know, mostly because I don't have to worry about gasoline, so that was great.
Yeah.
I found it difficult in the Midwest, and especially in Chicago, with charging. That's probably the biggest issue right here. It's really charging. If you have a Tesla,
And
you're fine.
that's an
Yeah,
infrastructure, right?
infrastructure is terrible. If you have a Tesla, you're totally fine. If you don't have a Tesla, then it's a little bit tricky. So you have to adjust your lifestyle, and I did that. Basically, I go to certain grocery store just because they have a fast charger.
Yep.
And even though I'm probably paying more at that grocery store, especially Whole Foods, but that's the only way to charge it. So I think I'm waiting. Now everyone is building electric cars, and they seem to be doing a good job, but I still don't see a lot of innovation in the infrastructure. That's kind of
Right. And so that's another reason. I mean, there's many reasons. That's why I'm hoping this new, Biden's infrastructure bill goes through, because there's a ton of
There's
money
a lot of money. Yeah,
for electric infrastructure, and it's like, chicken and egg. Well, let's build the egg.
yeah,
Chickens will come. Let's
exactly,
build the damn egg.
exactly.
And that's the thing. Like, I don't know about the EU. I know Germany, they're going nuts. Like, I mean, yeah, look, Volkswagen employs like 600,000 Germans or something. So it's pretty important. But like, they're gonna
They
have
will,
Tesla supercharger like EV
for
infrastructure
sure.
because they have the political will to do it. And
For sure.
like, the only way we get that is if this bill passes.
Yeah.
And like, I hope it passes.
I hope so too. I mean, it's a lot of money in there. I mean, not just for the electric cars, but for the overall infrastructure. Which it's badly needed. So
But if you think about it, right? So one of the problems with EVs is that we have a gas tax in the U.S. that the gas tax is supposed to pay for roads and maintenance, doesn't really. But if we use less and less gas, there's less and less tax collected. Like, we better get an infrastructure bill, or we're not going to have any roads left. So
agreed.
I like roads. I like
Me
roads
too.
a lot.
Even though Chicago roads are not that great, so
Well, yeah,
you have a
yeah,
little
yeah.
better
LA
roads.
roads aren't even that great, but we have some that are really good.
Yeah. No, you definitely do. All right, so I don't want to keep you too long. Let's end with this. Your passion for watches. How did that get started? Tell me a little bit about that. Because I see you posting about that, and it's kind of cool because I love it too.
Yeah. Okay. So I've long liked watches, but I never really had the financial wherewithal to buy anything beyond like G-Shocks. I have a
Yeah,
pretty nice G-Shock collection,
nice.
and then my wife, for my I think it was a birthday, maybe anniversary. Anyway, she got me a Zinn, this nice German watch
I know,
that I really liked.
beautiful.
And it's cool. It's the U1, the big diver
I
watch.
know, yeah.
And then I just love it. I started posting it, and then I just wound up buying a couple more. And then I got hooked up with that company, Crown and
I should know
Caliber,
him.
and so they just send me watches to wear.
They got
And
acquired
then,
by Hodinkee. Hodinkee.
yeah, Hodinkee just bought
Yeah,
them.
yeah.
So yeah, I guess I technically work with Hodinkee.
Yeah.
And then this British company, Bremont, however you pronounce it, they reached out and they're like, "Hey, would you like to be an ambassador?"
Nice.
I'm wearing one
Oh,
now.
nice,
Super
cool.
cool.
I haven't seen that one.
Um,
That looks cool. It's a chrono.
yeah, it's a yeah. This camera is not going to work. Let me see if I can take it off my wrist. But yeah, it's a pilot's chronograph. It's a lovely name. It's the
Oh, nice.
let's see, there we go.
Yeah, beautiful.
It's the Alt One Bremont
Very
Alt
cool.
One P2 Jet.
Gotcha. Do they
So,
make their own
but it's
movements?
I don't
You
know.
don't know.
I
Okay.
I think it's like they modify a movement. I think
Gotcha.
they got in trouble for saying they did, and
Yeah.
they actually don't.
Gotcha. All right.
Um,
It looks cool
but
though.
it's cool. It's steel. It's a DLC coating, diamond like carbon.
Nice.
Anyways, they asked me to be an ambassador, and I
Mhm.
was like, I've never done this. I'm like, and they're like, basically just wear the watch a lot,
Yeah.
and we'll give you one. I was
Nice.
like, all right, I can do that.
Yeah, nice.
And yeah, and it's just been great.
Yeah.
It's like not that I know everything there is to know about cars,
Yeah.
but like I'm not learning a ton new about cars these days. I've been doing this professionally for 16 years
It's a
now.
long time.
But I don't know anything about watches really, and I sort of know what I like, but not even that really. So for me, it's just fun to like. I don't subscribe. I shouldn't say I subscribe to a couple car magazines, but I have a watch magazine I get now, and I read it cover to cover. Where
Excited about
with the
it.
car ones, I'm like, I wrote that, I've driven that, and you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But the watch stuff is just fascinating, and yeah, it's just fun. It's
Yeah.
just fun, and it's a lot easier than cars too. Like I have a 914 that it's just still in the shop. It's just
Mm.
it's not good. It's a slow process, whereas watches is like
Takes them quicker. So what would be
it's
the
easy.
top three watches that you would own if you could afford them? I mean, let's not go crazy
Oh,
with hundreds of thousands of dollars. Like
yeah.
something that's
Well,
acquirable.
I would go crazy. I mean, my ultimate dream watch. I want it's the Elongenson
Oh, nice.
the split.
I don't know that
So
one,
the
but I
split
love the
second
brand
chronograph.
overall.
What's that?
I don't know the model, but I know the brand quite well. So
Yeah, so it's one of the big like haute horology. Like
gotcha.
it's the German company
Yeah.
that's like as good as the Swiss, and
Mm,
it's several $100,000. Ridiculous,
gotcha.
ridiculous. Um, but yeah, like that. It's a split second
Is it
chronograph. So
really?
in
Yeah.
other words, you start. The second hand starts, and then when you hit lap, one second hand keeps going, and the second
Oh,
one pauses.
wow.
So you can. So if you're taking notes, you know what I mean.
Yeah. Wow.
So, and actually, I do that a lot. Like the iPhone has that built in, and
Mm,
so when I'm timing Randy or something, like
using it.
if I can use my iPhone, but it's way cooler to do it
Yeah,
on your
that watch
watch.
exactly.
So that's number one. But
Gotcha.
again, I think I forget like 300,000 is
Mm,
stupid money.
crazy.
Yeah. Um, there's an H Moser. Oh, this is terrible for a podcast. I can't remember the name. There's this really cool H
Oh yeah.
Moser. It kind of looks like a Patek Nautilus, like
Okay.
that type of vibe,
Mm,
but it has this really cool, like just snaky kind of steel bracelet.
nice.
I can't think of the name. Um, boy, and one more. I gotta say something good here, right?
Mm,
Boy. Okay. Just trying to think. I would like to get a Zenith, however you pronounce it,
Zenith, yeah.
the new El Primero chronograph, like
Beautiful. I actually
a
looked at that
classic
one.
'69 style.
Really nice.
Um, that said, there's a Panerai that I really want.
Yeah.
There's a whole. I mean, there's like a zillion.
I'll probably take the Zenith over the Panerai. It's such a cool brand. And I think they make their own
Uh,
movements on some of the watches, and
Yeah,
it's
oh yeah.
yeah,
I mean, Panerai does their own movements too,
yeah,
but Zenith is I love that thing. I think it's just so cool, and I love
yeah,
I actually use chronographs
yeah,
constantly. Now, if I didn't have one, would I be okay? Yes, but
yeah,
like today, I was like, hey, how fast can I drive the Taycan up the
yeah.
hill?
I'm gonna use that.
Then I got stuck behind a truck, so it didn't matter. But
Mm.
I've been timing my showers. Like, can I keep my shower under 5 minutes? Go, and it's great.
You
And
really
it's
put him
like
to use. Oh, yeah, nice.
I love them. And it's like, and it's so funny because I had a G Shock. I wore G Shocks forever. They all have stopwatches on them,
Yeah,
but it's kind of like you got to go to a different
mm,
menu. Where this is just right there,
this
bam,
works.
go. And
Simple.
again, it's purpose built.
Yeah,
It's designed to do one thing.
exactly.
So it's good.
Cool. So let
So
me,
yeah, I think that's yeah.
I'm gonna end
I
with
think
this
I think that's
compliment. I was watching the other day some of your older videos with Jason, Jason
uh-huh.
Camisa. Fantastic,
Yeah.
man. I think that was one of the best series you guys have done, with videos. And I kind of wish you guys would get together like again to do kind of like a reunion thing.
Oh no, no,
No,
no. You can ask him. No, he didn't like me, and
I it
but
was good chemistry
watch
on screen though. I will give you that. You know,
off screen was a nightmare. But
I haven't asked
but
Jason
watch.
actually about that.
Well, yeah, he'll tell you. Yeah, we're no fan of each other. But he no, he was good though. He pushed me. I'll give this to Jason. He really
Nice.
pushed me to do better.
Yeah.
So I thank him for that. But I think the stuff I did with Jethro. If you're
Yeah,
watching
that
those, watch
was
the stuff
yeah.
I did with Jethro.
Mm,
And I think those are like I'm still
yeah.
mad that they canceled the show because
Mm,
especially
yeah, that was
the
good.
last about 14 episodes we did were I don't know just so good.
I saw, yeah,
We had
no,
so much
definitely
fun.
good. I think I only
And
mentioned Jason because I know his
yeah,
personality and I've known him for a while,
yeah,
and I kind of see
right.
like on the screen, So that's kind of made it fun just knowing him. But
Yeah,
honestly, it's not
no, no,
just
no.
me. I
Look,
see like a lot of people complimenting those videos. I mean, you've done a few good ones.
yeah, yeah. No, look, we did okay. It was I don't know what it was. It was neither of us are capable of backing down,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
it got ugly.
yeah. I mean, it's
Um,
part of
but
the
it was
job.
okay. Look, the show was doing great.
He was,
He
yeah,
quit. So
yeah.
I had to keep going.
And it was refreshing because now these days it's all about YouTubers a little bit, and I think you guys were a little bit. I mean, you're doing some real production, you know, which was kind of cool, you know, and there was a good script in there. Now most days, like, you know, just
There was
feeling
no
the
script.
camera. Yeah.
That's what I wish. No one believes me, but we never had a script.
Oh, really?
I mean,
No, I always thought it was scripted.
never.
No,
No,
really?
no. Like first of all, imagine getting me to stick to a script, as ridiculous as that is. Imagine getting Jason to stick to a
I
script.
can
Like
see it.
impossible. He couldn't even. What I always admired about Jason, not admired, but I was like amazed by. Like let's say okay, in this part right here, I'm gonna say you know, the McLaren is blue,
Yeah.
right? They go, okay, so he go, the McLaren is blue. They go, oh, let me do another take. The blue McLaren is sitting right there. Do another take. On this road right now, you will see a McLaren, and the color it is. He couldn't say the same sentence twice in a row. And so I'm very much like, you know, this is the 2021 McLaren 570S, and it's blue. All right, do it again. This is the 2021 McLaren 570S, and it's blue. I bang it out.
Yeah.
He couldn't do it. He was incapable of saying the same thing 2 times. Like literally, there was no script.
That's pretty funny.
And they begged us. They wanted us to use scripts so bad.
Really?
But I shouldn't say this because I still work for Motor Trend, but like what we found was, you know, whatever they wanted, do the opposite, and the videos were that much better because they always focused on the, you know, they'd be like, "We don't like your hat." I'm like, "All right, I'm gonna get a louder hat now." You know.
Did anyone have the bright idea to kind of do a behind the scenes of those shoots? No, that would have been hilarious.
Oh no! Oh, the Jason ones.
Yeah.
I mean, like literally, like punches flying.
That would have been hilarious, though. That would have been a comedy show a little bit.
There was no comedy. It was very. We were constantly upset. The crew was quitting, going into therapy. It was bad news.
Well, it didn't look that,
good.
you know, like every time I was like a YouTube one, it was like, yeah, this is really good, you know. So from our perspective, from the viewer's perspective, it was good, you know.
Yeah,
Let's put it that way.
no, good editors. We always had really good editors.
Nice.
No. I mean, it was. Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, well, it is what it is.
Again, he pushed me. I'm really glad
Yeah.
because I had kind of fallen into this comfortable rhythm, and he showed up and was like, "Fuck everything, we're going crazy."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Okay, cool, let's do that. That's fun." And so
Yeah.
that was I will always give him props for that. But it was
Yeah. Gotcha.
yeah.
All right, Johnny. Well, we keep it. We've been going for quite some time. I really appreciate the time.
It's been a blast.
No,
Yeah,
this was
it's been-
awesome. I really appreciate it. I know you're super busy. If I can ever do anything for you, let me know. I hope to see you know, events soon. That's kind of
Yeah, I mean, let's do that. But I'll anytime you want, man. I'll come back on. I love doing. You know, I love doing podcasts.
yeah, no, for sure. They're fun, and I tend to bring some other guys from my team, you know, because they have different questions, different ideas, and it's always more fun. It's more interactive, and we don't script it either. So,
Right.
yeah, we'll definitely find some time. I think there will be some really good BMW products coming out, like i4 and iX, and I think we can definitely talk a lot about that. So
Okay,
that's
cool.
so that'll be like a cool one to set up for sure. But I hope you're
Great.
doing well. You know, the family too, and
Yeah, well enough. We're hanging in there.
yeah,
Hanging in
that's good. I know. So thanks again, man. I really appreciate it, and we'll see you soon.
there. Okay, thank you
All
so
right,
much.
cheers.